Good morning. You are listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio. I am your host, Doug Dennison, and we are broadcasting from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city at WFOY 1240 AM studios. Through the power of the internet, this program is being streamed worldwide on 1240news.com. The show will also be archived on RowellAuctions.com, as they are the sponsor of this program. Additionally, this show will be posted on YouTube.com. We're going to be talking about real estate auctions, past auctions, upcoming auctions, different real estate markets across the country. We've got a lot of topics today. Help us out. We've got Georgia calling in. We've got North Carolina calling in. Should be fun. And want to remind you that our mission statement is to provide an educational experience for listeners in a promotional format for auctions across the country. Our listeners are real estate investors, real estate brokers, real estate media, banking officials, bankruptcy attorneys, and the general public. And again, the most important thing is to provide a educational experience so people feel comfortable with auctions, know how to go out and get them, and get a bargain. There's lots of bargains out there. For sellers, we offer a great opportunity to quickly sell your property in a fair and transparent way, and that will give you the money as quick as possible. Rowell Auctions, which is our sponsor, is a national real estate auction firm that started in 1936. They do online auctions, on-site auctions, and ballroom auctions. They have offices in Florida, New Jersey, California, Georgia, and have alliances with auctioneers and real estate brokers across the country. They do government auctions, bankruptcy auctions, and much more. They have a big auction schedule coming up, so check out their website at www.rowellauctions.com, or you can call them at 800-323-8388. That's 800-323-8888. And at the end of the show, I'm going to be talking about some predictions for next year and also what has happened this year. As always, I will go back to the government's 14,000 government surplus properties. We need to sell those things. The holding costs are just too much for the American taxpayer. Again, the Office of Management and Budget thinks that it cost us $1 billion a year in wasted money for these properties. And they range from, small slivers of land to big courthouses. And so it goes all across the board, but we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Let's go to our first caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Doug, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you.
Well, thank you so much. I haven't really got into that, thanking everybody for listening for the entire year and the great holiday season that's upon us. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Jere, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from, please.
Well, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana.
There you go.
I work with Rowell Auction Company as a national sales manager, and that is what I do.
Well,
a lot of what I do, Doug, is forecasting what's going to happen in reference to the economy and actual auction pricing, that sort of thing.
Well, you're the man, and you and I have known each other, let me see, probably the first time was 1987 at Lafayette, Louisiana. And
absolutely. We sold a motel in Patterson, Louisiana at that sale.
Was it Patterson?
Yes.
Okay. I knew it was south of Lafayette, and I could not remember, but I think there was only like one or two hotels in that sale. There was 445 properties. It was for the FDIC. It was the first big auction that the FDIC had ever done, and hopefully it started a wave of FDIC auctions that really helped the auction business and the industry. But the fact that you do forecasting and that you do valuation of a sort, that plays right into the end of the year kind of deal that I'd like to talk about today. We have it's been a great year. I'd like you to talk a little bit about RAL Auctions, what they do, who do they sell for the most, if you would, and how they do it.
Sure. Well, RAL Auctions has two distinct client bases.
Okay.
One is financial institutions,
Okay.
and the other are of landowners, large landowners, small landowners that may be interested in moving their property. The auction concept is strong in the states that were settled primarily by the English because, well, Sotheby's and Christie's are both older than the United States. So it was a method of selling that was fairly well accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So as time has gone on, the RAL firm has morphed into one of the largest online auction companies in the United States, but they still do ballroom-style auctions if that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
We have a series of events coming up where we will actually be on site for a very large land sale coming up, I think, in the first week or so in February. That'll be taking place in North Georgia. So we do it all. And our client base, as I said before, is primarily financial institutions and or individuals.
Why do financial institutions knock on your door, Jerry?
Well, is the net present value of an asset is what financial institutions are looking at.
Okay.
If it costs a financial institution, and these numbers are accurate, somewhere between 24 and 32% a year to hold an asset,
mm-hmm.
including decline in value and all the other costs that go along with it.
Yep.
If a bank holds an asset for 3 years, what's the net effect value of that asset to the bank?
Right.
Virtually nothing.
Are they that smart that they understand that? Because a lot of private sellers don't understand that. And I'll just go back to, somebody that has a house and they say, gee, I bought it for $200,000. And not only that, I put $30,000 worth of improvements in. So I'm looking at, I'd like to make a little profit. So $240,000 would be a good starting point. And you look at them and you say, man, this house isn't going to sell for anything over 180 because of the economy and the ups and downs of real estate. So they're not thinking net present value at all.
Well, and that's one of probably the mistakes that let's call them the average guy makes.
Right.
In other words, he has the same cost of carry, including opportunity costs, that a financial institution has.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, his cost of funds is higher, so it's probably a little higher.
Yeah.
The problem that you run into is sometimes there's a lack of understanding of that concept, and then in some cultures there is always the statement, I'm not going to give it away.
Right.
Now, if something is costing you 24 to 32% a year, it's in South Louisiana, there's a child game called Pass the Potato,
mm-hmm.
and it's a hot potato. And, of course, everybody's trying to get rid of the hot potato. Sometimes the most simple things are understood by children,
mm-hmm.
and as adults, we get too smart.
Well, again, you and I go way back, and we've seen a few ups and downs in the economy and the housing market. we've seen when auctions have really been used a lot, sometimes not so much. It's very interesting. Can you compare it all, this downturn, compared to previous downturns, if you would? Because I know you're kind of a historian, and you've got great knowledge on that kind of stuff.
You're being very complimentary at your end here, Doug. But in any event, what we have here is a monumental loss as compared to the last time. It's in multiples. It's probably 4 to 5 to 6, maybe even 10 times as large.
Wow.
Okay, that has been the problem that we've all been reluctant to deal with, and that is, well, it can't possibly be this bad. Well, yes, it can, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the bad news. And the good news is it's changing.
Okay.
So if there are any of your listeners out there that are not professionals and are looking at the possibility of buying a home, holding a home, or doing this, that, and the other, they need to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you take a look at the absorption in the marketplace, particularly in some areas in Florida, California, Nevada,
mm-hmm.
places that got hit the hardest,
right,
the available inventory is shrinking significantly. Okay? And there's a reason for that. Certainly the mom-and-pop buyers.
Right.
But institutional purchasers.
What is an institutional buyer?
That would be something like a real estate investment trust.
Okay.
And what they're doing, heretofore, most of those guys bought multi-floor office buildings, big deals, that they would hold for a number of years, and then they would sell at some point, and hopefully everybody would be happy.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, there is so much money to be made from buying low, holding, and selling high that they're actively pursuing the REO across the United States, to the extent that they're actually absorbing inventory at a rate significantly faster than can be justified any other way.
So are we talking houses that...
yes.
Okay. So houses that normally the big investor wouldn't go after, now they're going after. And usually it was the small, investor that would buy 3 or 4 and kind of in the same area and take care of them. But you're talking about a real estate investment trust or a REIT that you hear about, and they're taking hundreds, maybe thousands of them?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there was a transaction here recently, if I remember correctly, in Florida, when there was somewhere between 300 and 400 single-family residences taken down by a single REIT.
Okay. Let's go back a little bit further, Jerry, when we talk about when banks were failing, and banks are still failing, but back in the 90s, let's say, when a bank would fail, there might be 100 properties that bank had, depending on the size, and they would all be within 50 miles, maybe 60, maybe 70 miles of the the corporate office. And it has changed a great deal. Tell me why that has happened, number one, and then number two, why the disposition strategy has got to be different.
Well, participating mortgages
is
the answer to your question.
Okay.
The mortgage industry began participating mortgages to the extent that you would slice a mortgage into sections, okay, and you would have individual investors in a particular section of that mortgage.
All right.
And now that adds another level of complication, because that slicing and dicing, if you will, raises into some question the old joke, who's on first?
Mm-hmm.
Who actually has the control? Now, there was a landmark case in Florida, I believe, that started all this business about the robo-signing and this, that, and the other. The question was, who had the authority to foreclose on the asset.
Mm-hmm.
And in some instances, they still don't know.
Well, that's a difficult position to be in. When a purchaser of a bank portfolio, again 20 years ago, would look at that inventory, again, it would be close by, they would know exactly what to do. But now if they want to buy a bank, they've got properties in 15 different states. How do you do that if you're a buyer, and how do you help them as a seller of these kind of properties? Is that how the internet, became much more involved in auctions, because you couldn't go to a ballroom and sell a property that was 2,000 miles away?
Well, the idea behind the auction concept has always been to get all the interested parties you possibly could in competition with each other.
Okay.
And what we used to do back when you and I started the business is we would have a ballroom environment, and if people wanted to buy something, they came to that ballroom.
But all the properties were nearby.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. But now, as the properties are across the United States, we can't have ballrooms in every location, nor can we go to every location.
Right.
So that's where the internet came in.
Okay. And Rowell Auctions, you said, is one of the top firms. What kind of system do they use? Is it user-friendly? Is it hard to sign up? What makes Rowell so good?
Well, Rowell Auctions is a part of the MarkNet Alliance, which is an organization of about 50 of the top auction companies around the United States. And when we started this thing, Tommy Rowell was one of the original incorporators. We started working on a platform that would be easy to use.
Okay.
And as such, if somebody wants to sign up for an auction, they can go to the site, and in a matter of minutes, they can bid on properties all over the Southeast, the Southwest, North, and South.
Well, that is certainly easier. And when internet auctions were started, there was a lot of pushback because I can't see the auctioneer, I don't see who's bidding, I don't feel comfortable typing on a keyboard and spending thousands and thousands of dollars. But that's really changed, and it changes really daily for the better, that everybody is feeling more comfortable. They're buying products. I heard somewhere where this Christmas, even though it's not such a good economy, there's going to be more internet sales than ever because people are feeling better about it.
Well, I saw something else on that was most interesting, and that is that the Black Friday sales, in terms of a percentage of increase, were eclipsed by internet sales on that following Monday.
Wow.
So there's a change, a significant change.
Significant. Well, internet.
So, if you think about it, and you're involved in buying stocks or bonds or whatever like that, you make an occasional investment. You used to call your broker, and that broker would call another floor broker on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or whatever.
Yep.
Well, that broker's gone, and so is the floor broker. It's all electronic now.
Well, it's really a big change, and just as you said, when you've got 50 of the best auction companies putting their monies together for the best possible technical advantages to make it easier for a buyer on the internet, I think that's the way to go. I know we had a record with all of our companies that on one day, I think earlier this year, there was like 900 auctions taking place at the same time. So it seems like MarkNetAlliance.com has become a go-to place for real estate buyers and real estate investors, which has to help everybody, of course.
Absolutely. And when you go to any MarkNet member site, you have a window on the rest of the world. All the other MarkNet members, you can take a look at what's going on with them if you're interested in it across the United States.
Well, it's a wonderful thing. Real quick, because we just got about 3 minutes left before the break in the show. You do a lot of bank auctions, and which is a wonderful thing because people feel very comfortable buying bank property now. But a lot of the properties are absolute. Tell me, is that help getting more buyers to the sale?
Yeah, we did an analysis of actually the same exact floor plan in the same location. Two different lenders had it here recently.
Okay.
And we compared auction prices and the number of registered bidders on an absolute sale versus a reserve sale.
Mm-hmm.
We had 14 registered bidders for these apartments or condos on a reserve sale and 50 in an absolute sale.
Wow.
So common sense would tell you then that if we had more bidders, we would get a higher price. And we did. We got about 12.5% more. So, over the years, we've been major proponents of selling by the absolute method. And sometimes sellers are afraid to do that primarily because of their lack of experience. Well, if you're going to consider an auction, you need to trust the professionals that are doing it. And that's the best way to go in any business. When you step on an airplane and you're going to fly from here to New York, wherever here is, you have to trust the pilot.
It's a very good point, and the auctions that RAL Auctions have been doing this year, selling thousands of properties, just makes them on the forefront. How do we get a hold of you or RAL Auctions to look at all those properties?
Well, you can go to RowellAuctions.com, ROWELL Auctions, UCTIONS.com. You can call 800-323-8388.
Well, very good. Again, that number is 800-323-8388. Jere Daye, National Sales Manager for RAL Auctions. Thank you so much for calling in. You have a happy holiday, and tell all my friends up there tonight at the party, please give them my best.
I absolutely will. Good to talk to you, sir.
All right, Jere, you take care.
Bye.
All right, that was Jere Daye, National Sales Manager for RAL Auctions. Again, selling thousands of properties this year, a lot of them for banks, a lot of them being sold absolute, which means selling regardless of price to the highest bidder. It's the best way to sell for a seller. You get more competition, and the higher the price. But buyers know that it's going to sell, so they will come. Hey, we're going to go for a quick break, and then we'll be right back. All right, we are back. You're listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio. I am your host, Doug Dennison. We're broadcasting live from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. We just had Jere Daye on the show, National Sales Manager for RAL Auctions, talking about the fact that properties for banks, they're saying that they can lose value because of the holding cost, the management cost, from 24% to 32% a year. That's a high number, folks. And so, again, this is why auctions work. You don't want to wait a year in hopes of something selling because you're going to lose 24 to 32%. So what do? You sell quickly. You might take a little bit less than you want, but net present value is what Jere was talking about. And it's a term that, to make it simple, and I use the example of the house. You want $200,000 for the house, and if you're going to wait a year to try to get that because no one is buying, and you still don't get that money, well, maybe you sell it eventually after a year for $180,000 compared to what if you sold it immediately, and the cost savings. All right, we got another caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Doug. It's Alan Clark.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for calling in, and you are a friend of a friend. You are a friend of Jay Brown, who's a bankruptcy attorney in the Jacksonville area. He said that you would be a great person to have on the show. So tell us exactly, again, who you are, what you do, and where you're from, Alan.
Yeah, Doug, I appreciate you having me on and have an opportunity to talk a little about business brokerage. I'm in the, excuse me, I've been under the weather the last couple of days, so if I cough, I'll have to excuse myself.
Not a problem.
For the last 14 or 15 years, I've been in the business of business brokerage. So that is working with people who have generally a small business. It could be anything from a pizza shop or ice cream store to a significant business that might be a trucking company or a small manufacturing business with 30 to 40 employees. But generally, they're companies that are too small for investment bankers or merger and acquisition, quote unquote, type of folks to work with, and but they're owner-occupied, owner-operated type businesses, and we work with those owners generally to prepare their business for sale, to market the company for sale, find buyers who are qualified and fit that business, and then help to put that deal together. We help negotiate, the price and terms on the deal. We help to secure some financing if we can. Almost all the time it has the element of seller financing as part of the transaction because there's so much, personal goodwill in that type of business. It only makes sense to have a significant amount of owner financing in the transaction.
Well, tell me a little bit. You're from the Hatteras Group. Tell me a little bit about the Hatteras Group. Who is it, and how long they've been in business, and what kind of numbers do they sell as far as businesses per year?
The Hatteras Group, yes, it was. We established it about 12 years ago in Atlanta, and there were 3 or 4 of us that were doing business brokerage and just decided to put our resources together and it's a loose affiliation really more than anything. But I have an associate in Atlanta that we work together on particular transactions. I have an associate in Wilmington, North Carolina, and really that's it. But we kind of cover that southeast that way. We have engagements from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia to Washington D.C. In today's market, you don't have to be physically in the same market as somebody, and still we're still able to deliver the same services as far as reviewing and analyzing their business, contacting. The marketing that goes on now is so much internet based that you can operate this business from anywhere in the world, literally.
Well, this is good stuff, and this is a little bit different from what we do in the real estate auction business, but it's similar at the same time. Give us an example, and I don't care if you use a dry cleaner or a restaurant. Maybe a restaurant's a good thing. A restaurant all of a sudden calls you. What's usually their situation, and how do you help them, the seller, to get as much money as they can possibly get?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Great question, Doug. Generally, business owners are poor planners. I've found that in the last 14 years, and they wait. If they're calling me, there's usually a real pain, a real problem they have that's led to that, and they've not worked to build value to their business, but things have gotten tough, and now they want to sell. So oftentimes you'd be better off maybe calling you as an auction company and close the place down and auction stuff off. I mean, that's, literally, an option that they would have.
Right.
But so that owner calls me, and I would talk to him, explain the process that we would use to try to find an owner, really manage their expectation, because their expectation is they call me, I've got somebody in my, Rolodex that's going to walk up and write them a check. So their first expectation is that they're going to get all cash.
Yes.
And that's never the case.
Right.
So I have to burst their bubble on that. They also expect that it'll sell just in, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and the average in business brokerage is about, about 7 or 8 months.
Okay.
So their preconceived notion is that it's like putting something in an MLS, like a real estate MLS.
Sure.
And that's not the case at all. Even one of the nicest businesses I've ever sold was a professional service firm. We closed on it earlier this year, and it took us 14 months from start to finish to sell that business.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a case of that there's so many moving parts and so many things that have to line up just right. But this was a company that was highly profitable, and so we went through an offer. A buyer did some due diligence. Personalities conflict or something, that deal falls apart.
Sure.
So there's 3 or 4 months into it. Then another buyer comes along. You kind of work through that process. Maybe that one falls apart. And then the third one, in that particular case, worked on it for about 60 or 90 days and hammered it out and closed the deal. So,
well, business brokerage, I mean, it's not all distress, right? I mean, it could be somebody wants to retire and, really doesn't know how to.
Yeah, the ideal situation for us is it's not distress.
Okay.
Because, like you said, if it is distress, we're better off just having an auction and selling the inventory and the equipment, and they'll get as much, potentially as they would in selling it as a going concern.
Okay.
But we absolutely, we want to find businesses that don't, ideally they don't rely on the owner. If the owner has to be there 365 days a year, I probably can't sell that business because other people with money to buy a business don't want to work that hard anyway, and it's just not reasonable expectation. If a business owner has a business that they have good management in place, that's a business that has value to it. If they can take off a month and go on vacation or do something else, that's a business that has value to it.
I got it. And one of the things I would imagine, and I am not an expert in this at all, and that's why you're on the line, but I always thought if I had a business and it was time to sell, I wanted to retire, or partnership dissolution. I mean, there's lots of different things, but the buyer usually says, Doug, you've got a great business here, but I'm afraid as soon as you walk out the door that everybody is going to say, Doug's not here anymore. Well, we love Doug.
Yeah.
That's why we've been coming here for the last 15 years. How do you handle that? And is there kind of deals where the past owner stays in for a while? How does that happen?
Yeah, that's another good question. I mean, depending on the type of business and everything, at a minimum, an owner's going to take at least 30 days after closing to transition that business over to the new owner.
Okay.
So my recommendation to most people when they buy the business is you don't really need to tell anybody that you're the new owner. Just come in and start working. Pitch it that I'm a partner now, and I'm bringing in this new partner. He's going to start working with me.
Nice.
Some businesses, they might transfer. It might take upwards of a year, that they would work together. Just depends on the type of business. But that's exactly what we're talking about as far as that's the personal goodwill that really doesn't belong to the business. It still belongs to that owner. It goes home with him every night, and the way to offset that is with the seller financing. So the seller has incentive to stay positive, to work through. If I owe you money for the next 3 to 5 years, and I have a problem with a customer, you'll probably be glad to come down and have a cup of coffee with them. Go have lunch with somebody with me.
Okay.
And so it's just a natural, follow the money sort of thing. if you have an incentive and make sure you get paid every month, because if I buy that business and you're financing a third of that purchase, and for some reason you leave and you start up a competing business or try to get customers to go somewhere else, or in any way diminish that goodwill that I tried to buy from you, then it's going to be, I won't be able to pay that note, even if it's secured and everything. But I would have a case as well if I quit paying it to say, well, I couldn't pay it because you damaged the goodwill that I bought from you. So, I mean, you don't want things to go into any kind of litigation, but that's the practical side of that, part of the transaction.
Well, you brought up a good point where it brings in a term that a lot of people don't get involved in, but a non-compete type of thing where, if it was Doug's business and, I sell it and I make a good paycheck, and then, 3 months later I set up the same business, 5 blocks down the road, I could sway all those people to come, and that would not be fair, and I'm sure that there's a non-compete type of thing.
Right. So almost I would say every transaction I've ever done has a non-compete agreement in there.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother, there's attorneys that specialize in labor law and non-compete sort of agreements, and every state is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, you've got to have that seller agree in some form or fashion that they're not going to compete with you or, share confidential information from your business. I mean, sharing the customer list with a competitor wouldn't be competing, but that would be a breach of that sort of agreement.
Okay. And then one other thing that I was thinking about, if it's Doug's restaurant, and now I'm going to sell it to Fred and Pete and whoever, what happens to the name? They probably still want it to be called Doug's Restaurant, but I may not want to have it to be Doug's Restaurant for the rest of for another 20 years. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, absolutely. One of the assets you're buying, to be clear, when these types of transactions, 99 times out of 100 are asset purchases. So I'm buying the assets of your corporation.
Okay.
You've got it set up in an S corp or an LLC or something.
Yeah.
I buy the assets and put them into a new corporation or new corporate shell. One of those assets is the DBA, the doing business name, or the trade name, any of those things associated with it. So I'm purchasing those now. I'm trying to think back. Most of the time that's not been an issue. I'm trying to think if it's ever been an issue.
Okay.
But I could, if you did that, it's one of the 1,000 things that you negotiate as part of the deal, is to say, okay, well, give me 3 years to use that name, and that'll give me enough time to go from Jones's Restaurant to Jones Smith Restaurant all the way over to Smith Restaurant.
Got it.
And come up with a plan that you would transition away from that.
That's very interesting stuff, and I know that you must, if you've been in it for more than 10 years, you've got lots of interesting stories to tell. I'm sure you travel a great bit. Any suggestions, or do you see any trends? Do you see that there's going to be more of these kind of transactions coming up next year? Was it a good year this year? Give me your thoughts on that, Alan.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been very involved with the IBBA, the International Business Brokers Association.
Okay.
And that's the leading professional association for professional business brokers in America. So if anybody in the country, Canada, there's international chapters, if you're looking to sell a business and you don't know where to start, that would be the place to start, ibba.org. You can find a professional in your area, and then oftentimes that can lead to somewhere else. I get referrals on occasion from folks I've met in other markets, from Phoenix, Arizona, or Washington, D.C., or whatever, that refer business to me in my area. But as far as trends going on, and that's part of the trend, is that there's more and more professionalism in what business brokers do. It's been it's well, I'll just leave it at that. But as far as trends, back when 08, 09, when the financial markets really fell apart,
right?
Typical business brokerage firms, their transaction number and volume was cut in half from one year to the next, literally just in half.
Wow.
And I saw the same thing in our practice. I mean, it was really devastating. 09, 010. 11 started to come back a little bit, and personally, I've had a great year this year, and I think across the board, business brokers are seeing more activity. And it's a two-way street. If I'm trying to sell a business, most business owners don't want to sell it for what it's worth. They want to sell it for what they want.
Right.
And then when their business went down by 30 or 40%, if they were a contractor or they were a trucking company, whatever it was,
yep,
their business was impacted, so the value of it went down. So many of them made the decision, well, I'll just wait. I'll just hold, I'm not going to try to sell right now. I'll just wait.
Yep.
So you've got that kind of build-up of aging business owners in the market. Plus, you have a whole baby boomer generation that's going to age out.
Good
and all
point.
the predictions are is that there's a big wave of small businesses that will be transferred, in some form or fashion, either to a family member or to management or to a third party, over the next 10 years. So, the future of our business is very bright. I mean,
it sounds like it.
But the buyers are much more sophisticated.
Yep.
There's ease of information for buyers to do research and things. They're more professional, more educated than they were in the past. And so, I mean, I'm excited about the future, especially since I've finally kind of got back on my feet a little bit this year.
Well, good for you, and everybody has had ups and downs for sure. It's been a rough ride. We all hope that the economy and everything that goes along with it is going in the right direction. Alan, tell us how people can reach you so that they can take advantage of your services, sir.
Yeah, you could find us through our website, and that's going to be hatterisgroup.com. And Hatteras is a lighthouse off the coast of North Carolina. It's HATTERAS, like Sam, group.com. And then my direct number is area code 828, and it's 432-2900. If anybody were to have any questions, and I'm free with a lot of information. Always glad to consult and advise anybody on an initial basis to kind of get them going in the right direction. So, if anybody has a question about how to get started valuing a business like that, what's the expectation? That's kind of the first step to sell a business. Well, what is it worth? That's got to be part of that decision-making process to understand what it's worth, and then I can decide if I need to sell it or to try to add value to it, and we can give them ideas and some direction on that as well, and then have a 3 to 4 year plan maybe to be able to sell it for something more than it's worth now.
Alan, thank you so much for taking the time, and I want to give you some holiday wishes and have a great weekend and feel better, my friend.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. A new friend, Alan Clark. He is a certified business intermediary with the Hatteras Group. They are business brokers. They represent clients all in the Southeast. Going to go for a quick break right now, and then we will be right back. Okay, that was a quick break. Want to thank everybody for listening in. We're going to go real quick to the 14,000 government surplus properties. Jere Daye talked a little bit about it in the beginning of the show. He talked about the fact that it cost 24 to 32%. This is what bank estimates are. If a bank has a office building, it's worth $10 million. If they sit on it for a year, then the value of it and their cost go down by 24 to 32%. The government has 14,000 government surplus properties. 14,000 government surplus properties. We're not talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We're not talking about houses. We're talking about office buildings, warehouses, parcels of land, courthouses, that type of thing that right now are not being used. I always go back to the Washington Post annex that has been sitting in Washington, D.C. It cost the American taxpayer and the government $6 million a year for holding cost. $6 million a year for holding cost. It hasn't been used for 10 years. That's $60 million for just one property out of that 14,000 that is costing the American taxpayer big bucks. And the American taxpayer doesn't know that. Another property that we went down to Miami, actually did a show down there, had Congressman John Micah down there to interview him, and it was in an abandoned courthouse. The abandoned courthouse had been abandoned, not used, for 5 years, and it cost $1.2 million a year for holding cost. 1.2 times 5, that's $6 million a year that it costs the American taxpayer. This is unacceptable. As a taxpayer, as an American, as a business person, and we need to get involved as the general public to make sure that these properties are sold. Now, it's going in the right direction. It's just going very, very slow. President Obama, in the beginning of 2011, with his State of the Union address, got up and said, we need to sell a whole bunch of thousands of government surplus properties so it would help balance the budget and that we're wasting money. And then he followed it up with the budget address in February of 2011 and said, there's 14,000 government surplus properties, offices, warehouses, pieces of land that need to be sold because it is costing way too much money. And there are numbers that the GAO says that it could save up to $15 billion in the next 3 years if we can sell these properties and get them into the private sector hands. This will help in a variety of ways. If you can imagine a building in your hometown that is run by the government, but it's not being used right now for the last 3 years. Well, what happened to all of the surrounding businesses? Well, those surrounding businesses also went down because they lacked the people coming in and out. Usually when there's abandoned properties, you get more crime, more vagrancy, not a good thing. There is no taxes being paid to the local town because it's a government building. If the private sector comes in and buys it, that money goes to the government and helps us, because we have an enormous burden right now for a deficit. So that helps us. Number two, the new private sector person that buys it now is going to fix up the property. He's going to hire new people. He's going to buy goods and services, and all the area is going to benefit. And the city is going to be paid taxes by this new private entity. It is a very good thing. You need to contact your elected official. Tell them we want to sell these properties. Congressman Denham and Congressman Micah have been doing a good job, but we need help from the general public. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday, and thank you for listening. all year long, every Friday at 10 a.m. And again, stay close to your families, and we thank you for listening on this beautiful Friday day in Florida. Take care now.